because you could probably get 2 or 3 times as much out of it. But it's, like I said, it's not very dry, because even though we have lids, like there's always water coming in, and since it's been raining for 5 days, so see, there's all sorts of worms in it. Now, I won't leave this all. But the worms, they'll find a place in the garden, and they'll regenerate the soil, and they keep pores in the soil, and it's all good. So this is what you do. You sieve it, and then you just dress it around the outside of the plants that are setting fruit. Now, any root crops or anything like that, they don't need any extra stuff from the summer.
Yeah, it's just your heavy feeders, like your compost. Like
if you find this is too big, just make it smaller. You know? I don't know why I made it this size. Probably because I had a piece of wire that size.
And the lumber.
What's that?
Probably the lumber.
Maybe lumber. And I also use this to clean fiddleheads, so it's the same dual purpose, I guess. So yeah, this is what the compost will look like. And this stuff, this was started about 2 months ago. So, you know,
From vegetables and leaves.
vegetables and leaves and yard clippings and coffee
So
grinds.
we've trained all our neighbors. Train your neighbors.
Yeah, train your neighbors too.
To,
Yeah. If they
they're
don't compost.
very happy to have a place to dump their grass clippings and their hedge clippings, and so we've got them all
Some
trained.
some people they
drop by,
ask questions
dump their
about,
stuff.
like, when do you know your compost is ready, right? When is it done? Well, the bottom of our compost, like when I was digging this out this afternoon, like you can pick this up and you don't, like, it smells earthy.
Well, and the worms will start to vacate.
Yeah, when they've gone through the whole pile and there's just like black stuff left, they'll go. When last year we had, like, I don't know why, but we had a lot of compost in the fall for some reason, and so I had left a pile right next to the greenhouse, because we figured once we have everything out of the greenhouse, we put it in there, and in no time there was no worms left, and it was all dry. It was like just like that stuff that's in the bottom of that one now. And so,
if
yeah,
we
it
wanted,
goes really crumbly.
That's right. That's why it's handy to have more than one bin. So if we're like this stuff, this bin I'm still adding to, and the reason that is we lucked into a load of composted manure, so it's occupying our middle bin right now. But typically we'd stop, and if we weren't going to, so we'd stop it and we'd still work it for a few weeks, and then we would apply it, right? Then we'd go through the sieving process, and right, but we'd give it a couple or 3 weeks to kind of finish off and shut down, and then, you know, start, and then we've started another one, and then when we sieve it, that stuff we sieve will go back into the newly working one. But the thing is, don't get worried about using it mid-process, because by sieving it or using it to make compost tea, right, you can use it. It doesn't have to be completely broke down for it to be usable.
Yeah, this stuff would be good to make compost tea out of. You can just take a piece of, you can even take an old, like, pillowcase or something.
I just take a bucket.
And you put it in there, you hang it in a bucket, and you just use the water off it, right? And that doesn't mean you have to throw your compost away, because it's still good stuff, right? But there are a lot of nutrients would be leached out.
And a lot of drowned worms.
Drowned bugs. Yeah.
So you just put it in a bucket and then put water in it?
You can do it that way, but if you want, if you don't want, the pillowcase idea just keeps it separate, right? Then
Like a tea bag, yeah.
Like a tea bag, yeah, basically.
That's why they call it compost tea, I guess. Yeah. So,
a raised bed on a slope, would material like that be good to use, like in a swale, in a trench in front of the raised bed, because it would be absorbent, and as water ran
leach
off,
through there.
it'd go through there, release nutrients, make its way into the raised bed.
That would work, I think. I think the only thing to watch out for is, like, when you do that, make sure that there's no, like, leftover pieces of vegetables in there and stuff, because the critters will come and get it, right? And they'll spread it all over your garden.
with my tomatoes, when I plant them, what I typically do is I plant them, and then I'll take my hand and around the stem of the plant, I'll just take my fingers and I'll leave an indentation, because that will collect the moisture when it rains. And then when I'm dressing them, right, that's where I'll kind of put my compost is where I've dropped it, and then it's very close to the roots of the plant, and will go directly down and gather the water.
Now when you talk to, I've never followed the composting course. I know there is one in town, and then you become a master composter. I don't know if I just never took the time or wanted to take the time, I guess. But if you read Elliot Coleman, he's a 4-season gardener, and his website's on there. He says compost wants to happen. You know, it's a natural process. It wants to happen, and the way he does it, he layers his compost, and he describes it very specifically, like so much of this, and then so many inches of this, and then he just leaves it. But he uses a lot of straw and stuff like that, and it holds the heat. So then, like, all of a sudden, like it's ready to go, and he says it goes really fast. I've never tried that specific method, and I don't know if you could do it here. People also ask me, does it freeze in wintertime? Well, if you have really, really cold winters, like our compost would freeze, and a lot of the worms would die, because they're off the ground, right? So if you get a really cold spell before you have any real good snow cover, then it freezes from all sides, and eventually the worms have nowhere to go, right? And so if that would happen again, I think what I would do, I would salvage them and put them inside somehow. But I've had here in the past, of course, we haven't really had any cold winters for the last decade, so it hasn't happened recently. But our worms survived the winter in the compost pile, and so that's a good thing to have.
You just build this box right on the grass?
Yeah.
We have bricks in the
Well, I
bottom.
put old bricks in the bottom, just
'cause it's
because you
easier
need
to-
some drainage, and you can use like
something.
coarse branches and stuff like that for that too. But I like the bricks in the bottom because it's cleaner, and it's easier to empty and stuff like that. And like same thing, use everything that you can scrounge from anybody, like bricks, patio tiles, pieces of sandstone that you find on the road, anything like that. It all works. If you wanna, how many of you guys here have other gardens apart from here? Yeah. So how many of you guys already compost? Oh, everybody. So if you wanna be a successful composter, I think, build bins like this, or like the ones that are on my photos, because these are almost identical. And it's called hot composting, and it's from that British Columbia website that's on my handout sheet. And it describes exactly what you need to do, like roughly how big they need to be. And of course, that's not rocket science, right? They can be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, but just not too small, because then you don't have the heat generating capacity. And go through the sort of the same kind of things that it says. One of the things that I found out, and when I was reading this, and this is something I didn't know, and you probably knew that because you said where people used to pee, that's where all the nitrogen is and stuff like that. Think about nettles. Like, where do you find nettles? You find nettles on compost piles and stuff like that. And guess what's that?
Wild raspberries.
Wild raspberries. And guess what nettles are really rich in? Nitrogen. So if you have a patch of nettles somewhere along the path where you live or whatever, go and cut them down and put them in your compost, because obviously they're very good.
Stinging nettles.
Aprendes.
But do they grow
Se
here?
grow
I
here?
don't know yet.
So is there any other questions that people have always wanted to know about composting? I don't know if I have the answers, but try.
So in the interest of trying to do layering, I've always struggled with that because you don't have brown stuff in the wintertime. You only have kitchen waste, but you're supposed to make layers. So how do you handle that? Like what I did this year was I kept a bag of leaves in the porch,
Yeah,
and I would just add some to
that's
my
what I do.
kitchen. Okay.
Yeah. I have my leaves in one of my bins.
Yeah?
It's all full with leaves.
Okay,
so I just
you
add
just
them.
add
Yeah.
them. Okay.
Yeah. But the layering part too is like, so if you start a compost with layering, like a layer cake or whatever, which is what Elliot Coleman does, he leaves it alone.
Yeah.
But I don't leave it alone. I aerate mine all the time, so your layers are gone anyway. Right? So what's that?